welcome to Paperback Flicks. All right, welcome back, everybody. Paperback Flicks. We are doing Wizard of Oz.
No way. I never would have guessed that.
We're a little bit before and after, I think. So I wanted to show you the book that I'm working off of. That's where my daughter is. She started reading it. But it's like super old.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I'm gonna do whatever. I happened to go back to Missouri, where I'm from, like to my grandma's house.
Mm-hmm.
And this was like sitting under the bed where I used to sleep all the time when I would visit her house.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, that's it. That's the book. So I had to take it and read it specifically.
Okay. Cool.
You
listened to it on audiobook, of course. It was performed by Anne Hathaway, who I am not a fan of, but she did okay. I only hated a couple of the voices she made, but for the most part, it was mostly good. 4 out of 5 stars. So
decent. Oh, also, it already sleeping. Sorry, but I have a Toto too.
Yeah.
I have my little Toto. It was funny because when I came out like this, my girls were like, Dorothy? And I'm like, yep.
Yes. No.
And so they like insist, they're like, you have to have a Toto. So I'm complete with Toto sleeping in my lap.
Nice. Okay.
All right.
Go.
Let's go ahead and get this started. So of course, I left my notes out there, but we'll just wing it.
Yeah, that's what I always do.
So, did you read the book when you were little or have it read to you, or
I read it before this? This was my first time.
okay. Well then I say let's go the way that we have experienced it, and let's go movie first.
Okay.
Was it a movie that you watched as a child, or was that also when you were an adult?
I know I saw it as a child. I saw bits and pieces of it here and there, and then I actually watched it like a couple times. This is the first time I've watched it in a long time. This might be the first time I've seen it since as an adult. And I feel like I showed it to my kids at some point, but they don't remember for sure, and I can't remember for sure. So maybe I was just imagining it. I don't know. Yeah, or see it.
I've watched it since I was little. Like I said, like this was kind of a meat and potatoes part of my childhood. Like it's like a standard, like The Wizard of Oz, of course, you know. And so kind of a weird way of being introduced to it was that we had read the book, or I had it read to me or whatever, but my grandmother was obsessed with Shirley Temple. Like she always would like curl our hair to look like Shirley Temple and whatever. And she absolutely loved Shirley Temple. And apparently they really wanted Shirley Temple for Dorothy.
Oh, okay.
Like so my grandma was always like, "Oh, this movie, it's not as good as it could have been," because they didn't get Shirley Temple for the movie.
Yeah.
And so I was always like under the impression that I was like, yeah, this is one of those movies that's not so great because my grandma said so. You know?
Like it, so.
And then like everybody else like loved this movie, and so I was like, well, why? What am I missing? And so I watched it again, like just like to see it the way other people saw it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm actually incredibly entertained by this. Like, I don't know. I was like, why did I not like it for so long? Oh, because of grandma.
Or just the family members will do that to you.
Yeah. But yeah, so I did a whole weird, unexpected dive into MGM. So it used to be the actors had contracts through studios.
Yeah. So the studios owned the actors. The actors didn't own themselves.
Right. And so like it was when they went to go do a new movie, it wasn't like, come audition, let's see who is gonna. It was literally just like, oh well, we've got, you know,
this person.
16,
Yeah, like the
16
studios
leads.
found you. Like you weren't found otherwise. Like they discovered you. And so then they were responsible for you and you owed them everything. And so
Right.
didn't have any rights, pretty much.
and they kind of traded you like sports teams.
Mm-hmm.
So for Shirley Temple, to get Shirley Temple, they were willing to trade Rhett Butler,
Clark Gable.
Clark Gable, Clark Gable, and Jean Harlow
Oh, wow.
for Shirley Temple.
Wow.
And ultimately, they had Shirley Temple come in. She actually did this whole big media spot where she was like excited to go back to California because there's no place like home, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had her do a screen test. She couldn't do it properly. She couldn't sing this, like her voice was not developed enough to do the songs justice.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
so they were like, well, we happen to have a girl. So Judy Garland,
Mm-hmm.
they discovered her when she was like 7 or 8 with her sisters. She was Frances Gum. She and her sisters were this musical group, and they kind of plucked her out of it. And they were like, she's amazing. Her voice was already like this, like big deal at like 7 years old or whatever it was. And so they kept dressing her up like Shirley Temple. Like if you see some of her other stuff that she would do on their other shows, they would do her hair like Shirley Temple's. They would have her wear the weird baby doll dresses. And Shirley Temple is like 10 at the time that Judy Garland is like 14, 15. And so they were like, oh, well, we have our Shirley Temple replacement. And the initial screen test for Judy Garland, they had her in this blonde wig with curls and tried to make her look like Shirley Temple.
Yeah.
And it was just not right. And so when they took her to this look, they like scaled back the makeup and they just braided her own hair and made her look like a girl out of Kansas. They were like, we got it. Like that's it. So I don't know, that I know a big critique has always been she's like a woman and she sings like a woman. Like she is not a 10-year-old girl.
So she's
And
like, how old was she when this movie was made? Was she like her 20s or something?
no, she was 14 when they started all of that. I think she was 15 or 16 when they actually started filming.
Oh, because she does not look
Right.
like
That's kind of
any. She looks like she's in her 20s. Even though she
right.
has a baby face, there's still a sense of she comes off, even in portraying this younger kind of character, that she's an older person.
Right. And they did do that a lot. Like their college movies, they would have like, oh, we're a bunch of college kids, and they're all like 30s and 40s. And
Yeah, that
and
happened.
so that was a common thing that did happen. And so a lot of people just went, meh, okay, you know. But I know a lot of people now will critique it and be like, she's like acting, she's like, oh well, I'm a 10-year-old child. And you're like, but you're not a child. You're not a little girl.
Yeah,
She wasn't all that very old, but she just
a lot older than the character in the book is.
right, yeah.
I don't know if they actually ever came out and said exactly how old Dorothy was in the book, but they referred to her as a little girl.
Yeah, they referred to her as a little girl. I for some
About the
reason
same
I got
size as the Munchkins.
yeah. And I got the idea that she was supposed to be like somewhere between like 8 and not quite 12, like somewhere in that range. I
Mm-hmm.
don't remember now what like I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the age that Dorothy is. And if you've ever seen Return to Oz and like suddenly she's like 10 or 11, how everybody was like, how come when she returns, she's so much younger?
Because they tried to do it more accurately in the second one.
Kind of. I mean, they kind of went off on their own storyline, but also, I guess there's a whole bunch of books. So maybe they just used one of the other books because I only ever read The Wizard of Oz. I didn't even know there were other books
Oh,
until like high school, maybe. So, but anyway, the movie became super iconic, and it like even though Judy Garland had done other little things, it like it sent her into the A list. Everybody knew who Judy Garland was now.
yeah.
So anyway, sorry, that was just my weird deep dive that I did.
No, no, you're fine. Um, Random, somewhat related story. The song "Somewhere with Rainbow" is sentimental to me because I sang it with my great grandma Ruth when I visited her in Florida when I was in sixth grade. And of course, that's who I'm named for. And what's cool is that my grandma used to work in the movie theaters back in the day when they didn't have audio, they didn't have the stereo, and her job was to play the organ and play the music along with the film. And I always thought that was really cool that she'd gotten to do that, and to think how much film has changed in just a short period of her life.
That is really cool.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what do you think about the movie, like as a whole?
So for me, like because I already I knew the book story, I felt like the movie was incomplete maybe, and I understood it was a movie, and it was a movie made in like the 30s, like
Mm-hmm.
the 30s or the 40s. I don't remember now.
I think it's
So
like series.
I knew that they couldn't do all the things. I understood that.
Yeah.
But also I was like, oh, they just kind of they condensed things. They took the simplest way to tell the story, but also as it like as it would progress through the movie, I'm like, for me, it kept a nice clip. Do you know what I mean? So I was never bored, which I appreciate.
How do you feel about the music?
I love the music. I'm very entertained by the music. Did you watch this with your kids?
Yeah, we watched it with the kids.
So did they like it the same or more or less than you?
Um, I think overall they liked it. I think there were some questions like, why is that happening? But other than that, I kept putting out like, that's not in the book. That's not how it happened in the book. That's not how it happened in the book. They're like, did that happen in the book? No. I'm like, oh, that did. So yeah.
Did you like the music? Did it carry it through for you?
I feel like when I saw it before, the music never I loved, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, but I didn't really care all that much about the other songs. They were fun and bouncy, whatever, for this whole like jovial, adventurous journey across,
Mm-hmm.
the land of Oz. But I didn't really care about the other songs. And there were some songs I never really liked. I never liked the If I Were King of the Forest song, because it seemed like it came out of nowhere. It was
Which one?
If I Were the King of the Forest,
Oh, yeah.
outside of like the wizard's palace, whatever, while they're waiting to find out if they're going to go in. Just seemed like a random, weird moment. And I never
Yeah.
really liked that song. I mean, even though he's performs it really well, it just always felt out of place. But this time watching it, like I noticed the music more, and I felt like it was very distracting to the story. And not just because they had to like not do things that were in the book in order to have time for the songs, but also because like the story would be going along and suddenly we're doing a song, and then the song would kind of just go on for a while, and then I'd be like, the only song again that felt like it fit where it was at, like that didn't distract me at all, was Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Like
Mm.
it felt like natural for her to sing while she's sitting there contemplating to herself. And yeah, it felt natural enough to have the Munchkins like welcome her with a song, but then it goes on and on and on and on. And we have to introduce all the different guilds, all the different people, Munchkin Land.
And the
And it's
ballerinas. Yeah.
like, and they're not in the rest of the movie. So it's like, why are we introducing all these people unless they're going to be major parts for the rest of the film? But
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think what I liked about it was that like all of the songs were singable. Like, you look at like other things like, I know, I get it. Everybody likes Hamilton. And it's there are a lot of songs that I like in Hamilton.
not
However,
everybody likes that.
actually there's one song that I absolutely love in Hamilton. It's the King song.
Oh, yeah, that's my favorite part too. And from what I understand, most people prefer the King song to everything else. And
Yes.
that's because that's an actual Broadway song, written like a Broadway song, performed
Right.
a
And
Broadway
which is kind of what you're saying with the Over the Rainbow. It kind of it feels more like what we consider like a traditional musical feel.
Mhm.
But all of these stuff, like anytime like we're leaving the house with little kids, we'd be like, we're off to go to church now, yeah, or whatever. And we would like
Mhm.
change the words to make
Iconic
it
songs.
whatever.
Like we grew up with them, and Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead. And there were
Yeah.
lots of things that were said and done in the movie because you're like, oh yeah, I forgot. I didn't realize that came from this. So that's where this is what's being referenced when people talk about that. They're talking
Yeah. And that's kind of what I liked that's where I like I like musicals that I can sing along with, or that like we use in life, you know what I mean? Like we almost parody sometimes,
Yeah.
they're iconic to my kids growing up, even though they didn't necessarily see the movie until now. I don't know if they saw it when they were younger. I don't remember. But like those songs were in their head. And so when they start singing the songs, we can all sing with them, you know? And like Erin, my youngest, when they're singing to the Scarecrow and they're like, she says, with the thoughts you be thinking you could be the new Abe Lincoln if you only had a brain. And she's like, was Abe Lincoln famous for thoughts? Like, okay, let's have this discussion later. You know, like,
Yeah.
but just things like that, that like they were topical for the time, and they were, I don't know, just clever,
Yeah.
carries with you.
Yeah, I can definitely say that they're all memorable. I remember all the songs. I can't say that any of them are really throwaway. Even if I thought, The King of the Forest was kind of a silly moment, it's still a very memorable song.
Yeah.
Especially
Yeah.
with the way he sings it with his whole like vibrato, like kind of purr voice. Yeah.
Yeah.
With the
Yeah.
fullest. Yeah.
Which that guy, I forget his name. Of course, I forgot all the actors' name. You can edit them in
You're
because
the one that's supposed to remember the names, so I can just be the pretty one.
I,
I'm just kidding.
sorry. Which is funny because I'd probably just say the wrong actor, knowing me.
It's okay. We can always fix it in post. Or
Right.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so his like that was kind of his bit. Like he was a comedy character actor, and
Mhm.
like he always was, like whether he was the hobo or he was the whatever, the guy on the stairs, he always kind of had that like like
Yeah.
that was his bit. And so they were trying to make the lion, I don't know if it was more approachable or just kind of
More
like they
fun
didn't
for
want to be
kids.
like I'm a coward, like they wanted it to be like jovial almost.
Yeah.
And so that they went with this guy. The big iconic story that I knew about the making of Wizard of Oz was that the guy that was the Tin Man, that the original actor, they had used aluminum powder, and he had a severe allergic reaction to it.
Ooh.
And so they had to use a different actor with aluminum paint because the last guy was still in the hospital when they needed to start filming. So I knew that story, but I didn't realize, like, I had never seen the Scarecrow in anything else. And I was like, this would be weird to just be like,
In one
like,
movie.
like a weird derpy character to me. Like, I don't know that I would like to play this character. And then I saw some of his other stuff. And he does like, I don't even know, I don't remember what the show was called. The Ziegfeld Follies.
Oh yeah.
But he did it's like this crazy tap dance where he looks like a marionette, and it looks like people are like pulling him up with strings.
The physical comic.
Yeah.
The
And
Tumblr.
he was the like once I started watching his stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's the most amazing person they have ever had. Like, how is he not in everything?
Oh, he's
Because
kind of well known.
yeah, they had this whole dance number. I think it's like a 3-minute dance number that they cut out of the Scarecrow's song just for time. But it's it's like him like bouncing off of the what are these? They're back in my rear view mirror here. These
And
fences.
yeah.
They had him like bouncing off the fences, and they're like boom, boom, like bouncing around and doing this like crazy impossible dance where he's a scarecrow, and so he keeps like falling down or whatever.
Mhm.
And it looked great. It wasn't quite polished. So like you could see where they like pulled him up on wires at one point, and he's like wing, and they like pull him up on wires. That would have been fixed in post if they went with it. But all of these like crazy moves that he did that they just had to cut for time, and I'm like, dang it, because that would have been my favorite part of the movie if it were in the movie.
Yeah.
So
He definitely was very good at like his movements. He kept character throughout the film. He kept doing things the way somebody doesn't really have bones would do things like,
Mhm.
even though he wouldn't be able to walk at all if he didn't have bones, but like he kept up that aspect of the character and committed to it. And, it was fun to watch him like do things in a
Yeah.
strange scarecrow kind of a way. So I have to give him credit for the commitment to the character.
So overall, from not having read the book and now reading the book, do you still have the same opinion of the movie, or did it go better or worse?
Well, I don't know. Let's ask you. I have a lot to say. So, do you like the movie better or worse now?
So because I knew the book, I I was entertained by the movie, but I never really appreciated it in the way that I saw others appreciating it. But
Mhm.
like I said, it has become this like ingrained part of our life that sharing it with my children, I was like, guys, we have to watch The Wizard of Oz. Come on. Like I was excited for it, even though as a kid, I wasn't especially excited for it.
Yeah, because you learn to appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you feel about like the book as a whole?
The book, I had forgotten it was so gory. It's gory. Like everybody's heads come chopping off. Like,
True. Yep. There's quite a lot of death, convenient deaths, convenient answers to problems,
yeah,
much too easily fixed. And
yeah,
yeah, there's some things I'm like, they don't have the field mice in this part. Instead, Glinda sends a snow so that
yeah,
they wake up from the poppies. And I'm like, I guess that's what you do if you don't have computer animation or the ability to make like speaking mice to take care of your things. Like, I guess that's part of how you do it when you don't have those abilities.
I learned to appreciate the way that they handled Dorothy's Kansas time, because in the movie she has the farm hands, and she experiences the like traveling magician guy,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Thing with the neighbor.
yeah,
Yeah.
the lady on the bike. Yeah. And then she essentially what the story is in the movie is she bonks her head and Oz is all just a dream.
From
Or
the
is it
or
kind of a thing?
yeah, they kind of leave it open for you to think. And
Right.
yeah, I did appreciate how the movie gives so much more exposition than the book. The book just suddenly there's Dorothy and she's walking her house. Come here, Dorothy, there's a cyclone coming. And that's it. There's like you don't really get to know the character at all. So reading the book, I was like, I know I'm supposed to care about Dorothy, but if I hadn't already watched the movie and I didn't already know the story, I don't know that I would care about Dorothy because I
Yeah.
don't feel like we get to know her really very much at all throughout the story.
Yeah.
Like, and especially since they didn't give the chance just to get to know her on her own outside of this whole adventure,
Yeah.
it's it was a little off-putting because I was like, wow, so none of the stuff that's in the beginning of the movie is in the book, like any of it. And that's where I think the movie is a improvement over the book, is that whole beginning part in Kansas.
Yeah.
Because when you have that, you now are invested in her life back home and her relationships. To show she has these friends. It shows, plus also they need to show all the characters that are going to show up in Oz.
Right.
Either that's how she imagines them because she's in like a dreamlike comatose state or something, or they're supposed to represent the same kind of things in Oz.
So whereas in the book, you don't meet the Wicked Witch of the West until like the last like quarter of the book.
Yeah, that's the other thing that was super weird. I'm like, no, which I was like reading the book and I'm like, there's nothing from the perspective of the Wicked Witch until way
Also,
in.
Glinda suddenly became beautiful. Because in the book when she meets Glinda, she's just this old lady.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I think it was funny that it was a different um witch that helped her get back home. It wasn't Glinda. So it's like,
Mhm.
oh, so you actually met the other witch for a second in the book. And so, yeah, being able to get to know her back in Kansas made her more interesting and
Yeah.
more likable. Um, yes, it's a little harder as an adult to watch Judy Garland act like this, like frail child. Because you're like, you're a teenager at least, if not in your 20s. You're not a little girl. You can't be this fragile and silly.
Right.
But you're like, I gotta pretend she's supposed to be a little girl. Um, but oh, one of the things that bugged me about the movie is so Glenda tells her in the beginning, because well, first off, my husband pointed out that you have to start at the very center of Munchkin Land, at the very start of the Yellow Brick Road.
Mhm.
You could have started over there where she already was standing. She had to go all the way to the middle. And they're like, just follow the Yellow Brick Road. It'll take you to Oz. And they're like, that's all you got to do. And then when she meets the Scarecrow, it's a crossway and all over yellow brick roads. They're not different colors. He's like, it doesn't matter which way you go. And I'm like, what? Does physics not work here? So if you went this way, it would still take you to the same place. But then it's
All
go
roads lead to
way.
Oz. That was a critique that I had as a kid, and also my kids. We all saw that. We were all like, the yellow brick road is supposed to be like a finite destination. Like, what's going on here?
Apparently all
So
roads lead to Oz.
Oz, yeah. In the book, it's just like every chapters are only a few pages,
Yeah.
and every chapter is like, and here's the next adventure, and here's the next person they meet, and here's the next adventure, and here's the next and the next and the next and the next, and there's it's kind of just a series of like happenings. And then in the Wizard of Oz is not really a major component. Like, we're trying to get to the wizard for half the book, and then you get to him, and then he's not helpful, and he's
They
kind
go.
of,
It's the
yeah,
witch.
yeah. And so you're just like, okie dokie. And then there's still like a good chunk of the book. There's still like a quarter of the book left, and you're like, what do we do now? Like, you
Yeah.
know. But I liked that the movie, you had a villain. I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog too. Like, you had her, and you knew,
They put her back in throughout the story to keep
yeah,
it interesting. And
yeah. She
that was smart. I
she
think that was
wanted
a
the
good idea
shoes
on their
from
part.
the beginning, and that way they could introduce the little thing. Like, I understand in the book she's got like wolves and
The,
what, bees
and
and
then there's
crows.
and then
She
the
didn't,
flying monkeys.
yeah, and then the flying monkeys, and she didn't need all of those because we saw the flying monkeys. We saw this is a lady that can and will cause trouble. Also, she's got a legion of flying monkeys, and we didn't need her to send out the wolves, and when the wolves failed, send out the, we didn't need that.
Well, they're trying to do the whole like try and fail thing. And I get that. But at the same time, it's like if she already knows that the monkeys are like a sure thing and they've made everything she wanted to happen in the past. I
Mm-hmm.
get that she's trying not to use monkeys because of the whole
Three
golden
times.
cap thing, and she
Yeah.
can only use them 3 times. And so she's like, I don't want to send them out unless it's absolutely necessary. But at the same time, it's like you would still have your wolves and your bees and your crows if you
Right.
didn't send the monkeys in the first place.
And your slaves. And yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, probably. But yeah. Yeah, I did. So yeah, I did like that aspect of the movie. However, because I grew up with the book, like, there was just so much like, where are the mice? Where are the,
yeah,
we always called them Kalidas. I don't know what they're supposed
Kalitas. That's what they
to,
said it in the audiobook was the Kalitas.
Kalidas. Yeah.
Weird.
They're like, what are they? Body of a bear, head of a tiger.
Yeah, they were like a strange, almost chimera kind of animal
Yeah.
thing.
And like, I was like, well, I can see why. I mean,
Yeah, maybe.
the lion costume is a onesie. So,
And it's funny, there's a part where like people all just sleep in the poppies and you see the bottom of his feet. I'm like, that's so obviously a costume. They didn't even like pretend to give him paws, like the pads of the bottom of his feet at all. It's just like it's flat.
yep, it's like a shoe
Shoe bottom.
bottom. Yeah. Yeah. And so I understand why they didn't try to do that. Like you said, they didn't have the like computer animation type stuff to be able to do all the mice, and how would they make that, like, the animatronics for that would take,
Yeah. Like I guess like what they could have done is they could have just had them hear the voices and then like the mice would tell them like they're so small they're in the grass they wouldn't see them. And then, oh, we are the mice, blah blah blah, whatever.
right.
Um well plus they saved the queen of the field mice from one of the Kalitas, right?
No, from just a wild cat.
It's a
And
wild cat. Okay.
and again, it's chopping a head off. Like it's funny
Oh,
because
what?
it talks about how he's so tenderhearted even though he doesn't have a heart. Because like that, and that's the thing, is that the scarecrow comes up with all of the answers.
Yeah,
And
both we don't have a brain. And the lion is willing to go out there and do all the stuff. So I thought that was really interesting. I enjoyed that about the book, is that essentially they're showing that they had these traits already there. They just didn't know. They're
yeah,
confident enough in themselves to realize that they already were the thing they were searching for.
yeah,
First works out with, Dorothy and the whole, there's no place like home. You already had what you needed. You didn't need to go on an adventure. You didn't need to run away like she does in the movie, not in the book. The
in
book
the
shows.
book, yeah. In the book, it just happens to her.
Well, she ran away first because the lady was gonna take away her dog, and then Toto comes back in the movie.
In the movie, yeah,
Yeah. And so then she's like, well, I have to run away or the lady's gonna take Toto. And
yeah,
then she runs away and she meets the wizard. And I like that because then the wizard shows back up in multiple places as other characters.
yeah. I think
And
he played
that
like
was fun.
5 characters.
Yeah, he was like all the guards in Emerald City.
Wasn't he the so he yeah, he was the doorman, the gatekeeper, and the like guard with like the long mustache.
Mm-hmm.
But it went down, I guess. But wasn't he also the carriage driver, or was that? I feel like he was also the carriage
He was
driver.
the carriage driver too. Yeah,
Yeah,
they were used constantly throughout that part.
which I love that the horse of a different color. I use that all the time.
Yeah, so
That phrase.
I don't think anybody uses that phrase anymore. My kids had no idea why that was a joke. I'm like, oh, that's what they used to say.
Well, that changes the situation. That's a
Yeah.
horse of a different color.
So yeah, let's talk about when they go to see the wizard in the book. They're there for several days. They're not just there for like a moment.
Right. This
And
the
they
book the book takes like months. Like it takes so long.
yeah, she's gone a long time in the book. And when they're
Yeah.
in the Emerald City, like they stay in the palace and they're given rooms, and they're given clothes. One thing I wish they had done in the movie, I wish they had made everyone's hair green, like they had
Mm-hmm.
done in the book. That would have been really fun to see
Well,
everybody with the
so,
green beards and green hair and everybody in
so
dresses.
I thought it was I thought it was interesting, and I didn't catch it when I was a kid, but I thought of it now, how he like insists that they put on
Yeah.
the green spectacles,
Hmm.
and then everything looks green, but when she steps out of Emerald City, her dress is white.
Yeah.
And so it makes me wonder, did they have green skin and green hair, or was it the spectacles?
With the spectacles. But I would have been fun if they'd done the spectacles, if they had done
Right.
that aspect of it. Not that it needed to be done. And I understand why they're like, yeah, let's not do that. Then want to put weird spectacles on everybody's eyes, and now you can't recognize Dorothy, and I thought
Yeah.
stick with her signature look, and everybody do their signature things. I think another random note, another good thing about doing an older actress for Dorothy is they're all about in the same like line. When you're trying
Mhm.
to film, when you're having to deal with a short person and a tall person, you have to be really creative about how you film them.
Yeah.
So it kind of just works out better that way. But
Yeah.
yeah, so in Emerald City, they're there for like 4 days or something, and the wizard will only see one of them a day.
Right.
And then like he has his meeting with them, and then he appears a different thing to everybody. So
Right.
to Dorothy was a giant head. To I want to say the scarecrow
He was a lady.
was a lovely lady.
Mhm.
Um, to the lion, he was some kind of beast, some kind of monster, wasn't he?
The lion, he was a fireball.
The
He was
fireball.
the
And
Tin
then
Man, he was a big
the Tin
beast.
Man, it was some kind of beast.
Yeah.
Anyways, but I thought that was interesting that he appeared as different things every time. And you understand why they didn't do that, why they condensed that to one thing. And yeah, the giant head works probably the best.
Yeah. Did you like all the extra little things, or
They were interesting. Like, so there's all this extra stuff that they did on their way to the Wicked Witch's castle to go kill the Wicked Witch and all the stuff. After on the way back from the Wicked Witch to back to Oz. So first off, they have the monkeys take them to Oz, right?
right?
And like she asked them to take her back to Kansas, and they're like, "Oh, we can't carry you out of Oz. We can't do that. Well, we can't help you." And then instead of going, "Oh, wait, can you just take me to where I need to go? They're like, they're already gone. They're like,
Yeah.
well, I guess you can only ask one favor, and if they can't do it, then you just lost that favor. So she
Right.
still have two things. She didn't use it.
Right. It's like the whole Aladdin conundrum.
Yeah.
I just bet you couldn't do it. I never said I wish. Like it kind of felt like the same thing. Like she's like, "Hey, can you do this?" And they're like, "Nope, peace."
So yeah, and then there was all the extra stuff getting over to the other witch's castle. So there was the China Doll Kingdom, which I thought was very interesting to read. And they do use that in other iterations, other Wizard of Oz kind of stories, other movies that are out there. They have the little China Doll characters.
Mm-hmm.
Um, again, I see why they would get rid of it because that would be extremely difficult for them to do in a movie in the 1930s
Right.
out configuration, and there would be a lot of puppetry to do that, and that's probably
Yeah.
way too difficult. Plus, you don't need to have all this extra in between. But
Right.
what's nice about the in between is when they're in the Wicked Witch's castle and they stop the Wicked Witch, which is again completely different than it is in the movie.
Winkies, yeah.
Pinkies end up wanting the Tin Man to stay and rule over them now that the Wicked Witch is gone.
Yeah.
Apparently, they can't rule themselves. I don't.
Well, everybody does that.
Played for so long that they need someone to tell them what to do.
Yeah.
But
Everyone does that though. The Emerald City, when the wizard leaves, they're like, "Scarecrow!" Like,
yeah, he gives it to the scarecrow. It's like, okay,
yeah.
he just barely got here. He doesn't know the city at all. But there's not somebody else that works here that should be appointed as steward or whatnot.
Right.
Yeah, and then but at least with the lion, again, I thought it was still kind of funny that they asked the lion, they're going through this crazy forest, all these wild creatures. They asked him to get rid of this monster thing. And in the book, it's super easy. He goes in and finds him while he's sleeping and kills him while he's asleep. And I
Yeah.
was like, that guy wasn't so tough. Like, everyone's all, we can't do it. And you're bigger than all our lions, so you do it. And it's like, you just didn't sneak up on him when he was sleeping. You need to be more strategic. The difference there is that the lion said, if I do this for you, will you let me rule over you and obey me? And
Mhm.
it was his idea.
Right.
It was different then. But I like that because then it's like when Dorothy leaves, they all have a much better situation than when she came.
Right.
They're all in a better place. Like, yeah, she helped the scarecrow get down from the pole in the field, and she helped the Tin Man get greased up so he can actually move again.
Mhm.
And it helped get the lion to stop pretending, stop being a bully, stop pretending to be brave and actually be brave. But now they all have their own kingdoms now, no
Right.
places to like rule. And I thought that was cool. I understand why they didn't use it in the movie, but it looked pretty cool. So I was like,
Yeah. I think for the movie, so like we were saying, like some of the things were just, it would have been too time consuming to figure it out. The puppetry or the whatever, it would have been cost prohibitive and had fallen out of their time restraint. But also it was the Wizard of Oz. And so everything was Dorothy Gale and the Wizard of Oz. And so, like, all the stuff that happens after he goes home, okay, Dorothy goes home now because he's gone. He's gone off to Omaha. Isn't that where he goes? Or we assume that he goes.
yeah,
But but there was no real reason to keep
to keep going and make her go somewhere else. Yeah,
right.
I do like that choice to have Glenna, who we've already met in the beginning of the
Mhm.
book, come back and be the one to tell her, hey, yeah, those shoes will take you home. I'm like, why didn't you tell me before? Well, because you had to believe it. You had to get there. Like she had to go through this journey to be able to have the power or the confidence in herself to be able to use the shoes.
Right.
Not what they're saying.
Yeah.
Um, and so then she clicks her heels and she leaves from there. And I like that aspect. I don't know. I used to like it just fine before I read the book, but I don't know that I like that they're insinuating that it's just a coma dream.
Yeah.
Because, they have the other books and it's supposed to be a whole thing. But then apparently in the series, and I haven't read all the books, but I know this from other things that are based off of Wizard of Oz or have like elements of the Wizard of Oz in it, that at one point Dorothy's family tries to commit her to a mental asylum because they think she's crazy. And she's still talking about Oz like it's a real place. I don't know. I guess I liked it better at it being a real thing, and that she was actually missing, and that she showed back up, and she walks back up to the house, and they're like, oh, we were gone, and that she was actually someplace in the book.
Yeah.
But I can see why they would do that, because they're making it more like Oz in the movie is more of a metaphor than it is a real place.
Well, and today, when you make a movie and it's a hit, what's the very next thing you do? Make six more movies, right?
Based off of a series of books. Like,
Right,
surprising. Well, today, if it had been made today, they would immediately have had plans to do
right,
all the other books.
right. Or at least several of them, like they did with the Chronicles of Narnia. They
Yeah,
didn't do the Magician's Nephew because it wasn't as, I think it's a pivotal book. Like that's the one where she creates the like lamppost and everything. Like that's where Narnia comes into being. However, it wasn't dynamic. It wasn't as dynamic as
it's
some of
been,
the other books. And I think they only made three movies, didn't they? The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Prince Caspian, and
yes,
maybe and the Dawn Treader. I think those are the only ones that they made. And so, but they told basically the story that they wanted to tell. With so back at the time that they made the Wizard of Oz, um, making more was not a thing.
no, it was
And
too much work to do it in the first place.
right.
Yeah,
And you never know because MGM, it was the music, the musical
studio.
studio. They pumped out all of them that you remember either had Shirley Temple or they were from MGM. Like
Yeah,
they were the top dogs and they weren't interested in making a series that people had to hold on to and people had to care about throughout.
yeah. They
Like,
were looking to make franchises. They're just looking to make money.
right.
Yeah,
And they were looking to make the next big because they had three different tiers. They had the like follies type
mhm.
um talent showy stuff,
Yeah,
and they had the what they call them, like the summer, they're like the summer feel good movies. Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland did at least six of them that had the same plot. Like they were like kids in a small town, and then they were like I maybe boyfriend girlfriend or something, like sometimes they were boyfriend girlfriend, sometimes they were enemies or whatever, and then they had to like they were like I'm gonna write a script for the whole town or whatever. Like it was the same plot and they just had different names and slightly different like
scenarios.
scenarios. Yeah, it was weird, but people loved them because they knew that every like 6 months or whatever they would get their new like Rooney Garland feel good flick. So they
Yeah,
had a bunch of those. And then they had their big either drama or musicals.
yeah,
And the dramas might be iconic, but the musicals were the sweet spot for MGM. And so they weren't interested in the others of Oz. They were interested in I don't know if it's the flagship book or if it's just the one that stuck, the one that was the most popular, the most iconic, The Wizard of Oz. And ironically, it's only iconic now because of the movie. There are many people that don't know this is a book, and many people like me that know of this book and don't realize it's a series
yeah.
because the movie immortalized it.
Exactly. Yeah. I've always wanted to read them and I never got around to it. So this has been nice to read them.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely will read the rest of them at some point now. There was a TV show called Tin Man that's
Mm-hmm.
sort of like a alternate spin-off version of this and had
Yeah,
Deschanel in it and everything. And I remember that being very interesting. And they have elements of Wizard of Oz and Once Upon a Time TV
right.
show. And so I think it's the world that he created as the author was very fascinating, very interesting, and very fantastical.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a theme they talked about, like in the beginning of the audiobook, like a forward or something, was that, you know, he was writing stories just to entertain children that
Uh-huh.
weren't so gloom and doom and were more fun, despite the fact that there's lots of head chopping off in the book. It doesn't talk about blood spurting and all that, but
True.
the Tin Man kills quite a lot of people for being a tender-hearted person. Like when it's time to kill somebody, and he's got to do it. He's got to do it. It's like,
But it's always aggressors every time. It's the wildcat that was chasing a mouse. It's the wolves that are coming after Dorothy. It's always the aggressor, and he's just like, boom.
putting that
Even
down.
when the lion goes after, is it like a spider? I'm trying to remember what the lion goes after. When he's like, he has courage now, like biffs the head off of him. But like, I guess these are kids that grew up with Grimm's. This was like the safe for kids type of story at the time. And I'm like, I never thought about it as a kid, but
It is kind of violent. It is kind of dark.
they're like, oh, someone's a problem in your life, chop his head off.
Well, they're threatening someone's life, then
Sure.
Um, what are the other things about the book? Oh, I thought it was very interesting in the book that the Tin Man had a whole story for how he became the Tin Man. I loved that. I thought that was very interesting that he was a regular dude, and then because the woman he wanted to marry's mother didn't, or aunt or relative, I forget who she was, didn't want to live alone and didn't want the girl to get married and leave her.
Yeah.
She got created a deal with the Wicked Witch. Was it of the East?
I think it was the East. Yeah.
East,
I
and
think.
had her constantly do things to him, so he kept losing limbs. And then the tinsmith would like make him a new arm, and then he lose a leg and get a new leg, and like to the point where he was almost all
And
in.
then again, he gets his head chopped off, and the tinsmith is like, I'll just make him a tin head. Like,
Yeah, and it's like, what part of you is keeping you alive here? Because apparently
yeah.
you don't have any internal organs, and once your head is cut off, what?
Yeah.
Like this is a fantasy world, so that can work in a fantasy world, and it's a fantasy world for children where they don't think about these things.
There was a movie that kind of addressed that. Like, it
Me,
had to be Tin Man.
oh yeah, there's another movie with James Franco and Mila Kunis,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it was supposed to be when he first got there, so when Oz first showed up. And
Right. It was like the great and powerful, like,
Oz the Great and Powerful, something like that. Yeah,
yeah. But and then there's also Wicked, where they have a backstory. Like, there's a bunch of,
and inspired by.
yeah. And I guess I don't know how many of them lean on the book series. I don't actually know. I like backstories. Sometimes I kind of feel like I like the Tin Man's backstory. When the Scarecrow was telling his backstory, where he was putting me together and then he, painted my eyes or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, we get it. He made a scarecrow.
Or all
Like,
your girls alive, or just you, and why?
right. So is it the straw that's special?
That
Like,
poor man, that poor midget dude, whatever. He put all this effort into making this scarecrow, and then he just ups and walks away.
yep. Well, I was going to ask you, if they were to remake this, would you? I'm stealing this a little bit from Nostalgia Cast. We had Darren last time, and
Yeah,
so of course I've been catching up because I'm like, I've seen some of your videos and I will listen to a couple of it. So I was doing a bunch more of them. And something that he often asks, or maybe always asks, I don't know, is would you want a remake
worth a
or
remake. Is it worth remembering or worth a remake?
yeah, which sometimes I feel like both. But on this one, would you be up for like a legit remake or not just a inspired by, but like an actual like
Like the trying to do the book itself justice.
right.
I think it would be kind of fun to see the field mice and to see little China people. I think it would be really interesting to see it done nowadays, but like done right and with a character that's actually the right age. And it could be really fun. But there
Yeah.
are lots of things that they do in the book that aren't necessary, like the going over to see the other witch at the edge of the desert. They
Mm-hmm.
didn't need all that, except for, through that experience that the lion becomes ruler of the forest over there.
Right. Well, and I think part of that too was the world building happened kind of oddly in this one. Like he sets up Kansas and like you can see back behind me, like he describes everything as gray. The
Yeah,
dust was gray, the sunlight was gray. It like cast a grayness over everyththing. And
everything washed out and like,
yeah,
yeah.
And then when you go to the Munchkin land, it wasn't this bright, vibrant, like it was vibrant, but it was all blue. Like they all had blue houses and blue clothes
Yeah.
and,
The
you know,
different like parts of the land had different colors. So then it was
yeah.
part.
And they set it up that they were like the north, the south, the, the east, the west, the Emerald City in the middle or something like that. And the colors mattered and the each realm mattered. And I think it kind of seemed to be like you addressed the Blue Munchkin Land and Emerald City and
Yeah, but like everybody else kind of got ignored. And
yeah,
and that's fine. Like I can see why they condensed a lot of the stuff, but it
yeah.
might be fun to see it redone. But there are things that they did in the movie that are definitely better than the book, like the whole exposition at the beginning with Kansas. I would
Mm-hmm.
keep that.
Mm-hmm.
That helps you really get into the story. Um, but yeah, maybe they could do a little bit more with all the other things that happen. In some ways, I kind of liked that there was more to the Wicked Witch trying to get Dorothy and them. That I kind of liked that she had the wolves and the bees and the crows, and then it was the monkeys. Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense if you have flying monkeys. Why not use them first? But in the movie, she had unlimited power over the flying monkeys. They were like her pets or something. Like she
Mm-hmm.
didn't have like a set. You can only do this. Um, but it was kind of fun, and it would have been kind of fun because you get to watch the lion take some of them out, and then the Tin Man takes some of them out, and then the Scarecrow were able to protect them from the bees because he just scattered himself over top of them, and they couldn't be stung because they couldn't even find him. So
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really interesting and cool.
Yeah.
And I
They
think,
all had their moment to shine.
yeah, I think all the little things where you get to know their characters and you get to see they really are what they want to be. They just don't see their true potential. But that
Mm-hmm.
was really interesting, and that would have been fun to see more in the movie.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this movie is very iconic, and I used to think it was the first movie that ever have color in it, but it's not. But for
It
some
felt
people,
like it, right? Like when it went from black and white to color and everybody was like,
I think
whoa.
it's the
And then I'm
first
like,
movie to do something like that.
wait, there was already color movies.
I think that's the first movie to do that, where it went from black and white into a color world.
Mm,
I think that's very effective to portray what he was saying in the book about how Kansas had a very lifeless and washed out feel about it. And then
mm-hmm.
she goes to this wonderful land. And I think that's also supposed to like reflect her mentality. Like she kind of felt like Kansas was kind of boring and there was nothing to do and there was no one there and there's nothing going on here. So part of her, whether she intended to go on a quest or not, wanted an adventure. So then she ends up on an adventure in this wonderful, vibrant, interesting world with all these different characters and things to do. And it's, she finds out that it's not worth all the trouble.
Yeah.
That really better, what you have was good. You don't need to go looking for trouble because, yeah, it's exciting, but it's also a lot of work. At every turn, there's another thing you have to deal with and another thing going on. So like when people act like they want to have adventure and they want to go have excitement in their life, like, well, that comes with a lot of risk and that
Mm-hmm.
comes with a lot of consequences. So don't necessarily be running off the door to go, see the world if you don't have to. And what you have at home is fine.
Yeah.
And not just fine, but great.
Yeah.
And I did like that the whole time, even though she's going through all these amazing things and she's going to do all this stuff, she consistently wanted to go home
Yeah.
no matter how amazing it was or how good a friend she made or how everybody wanted her to stay, she wanted to go home. She was
Yeah.
worried about Aunt Em and her being worried about her, feeling like she'd taken her for granted and hadn't appreciated her enough. And she wanted her
Right.
to know she appreciated her.
Yeah. And I love that. The iconic phrase, there's no place like home. Um
Not really.
I like I get it that there are always the people who are like, well, my home was awful. And I'm sure, okay, I believe you. There are lots of homes that might be awful.
Yeah.
But it kind of, to me, it goes along with the concept that the term home is where the heart is.
Yeah.
Her heart was with Aunt Em in this bland, gray, boring world, but her heart was with her aunt.
Mm-hmm.
And the concept that she would leave all of this amazingness behind and all of these beloved friends or whatever, all these people who were like, no, we want you to stay with us. We would make you like the queen or what, you know what I mean? Like these
Yeah.
people that are like, no, anything to keep you here. But you are not where her heart is. And she would rather go back to bland and gray and boring
To be with
and love.
people she loves. Yeah. Well, I think it also shows that I think the overall message is that family should come first. That
Mm-hmm.
like whatever other things you do, your home is where the heart is, like you're saying, but like it's the family. But the family matters. That home matters. And yes, people that came from messed up homes, um, we should still appreciate that message because eventually you will find the place that feels like home, even if you don't have it now. When you do have it, you're going to want to hold on to that and cherish that and take care of it. And
Mm-hmm.
especially with Dorothy's situation, she didn't realize what she had until she lost it. And that's the other aspect of the story. Is a lot of times people don't realize they have a great home or a great life until they lose it. And then suddenly it's like, oh, wait, I was really great. Why was I wishing that away? Why couldn't I
Mm-hmm.
have just been happy with what I had? So it's also kind of like a be careful what you wish for sort of situation. But
My Toto woke up.
totally, that's cute.
I love the book for like I love the book because I feel like I get so much more of the world of Oz, but I like that the movie is more endearing. There's not a lot that I like remember and pull from the book,
Mm-hmm.
except for stuff that's already in the movie anyway. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like and I pulled from it and I remember it from the movie. The one thing I always wanted silver slippers. I didn't care about ruby slippers. That was not a thing for me.
Yeah,
Like,
I thought that was interesting because I didn't know they were silver slippers in the book. And I was like,
yeah.
you know what? That makes sense though that they would change with rubies because they talked about how everything Kansas was gray. It would
Mm-hmm.
be more interesting and more poignant for it to be a brighter, more dominant color.
Yeah.
Ruby slippers. But you know what's funny? I actually had these green, like they were like a small little heel kind of ballet round toe ballet flats that had like a green bow on it. And they were actually called Emerald City shoes. So they're like the Dorothy shoes, but they were green. And I loved those shoes. And I had so many comments on them. And then they died. And I've been searching for a replacement pair of them ever since. And but I'm a green person. I'm all for emeralds, even though ruby is my birthstone. I would like those green shoes in. But that style in
That
general is just cute.
that was the other thing I was gonna mention. I don't know how that reminded well, Emerald, back to Emerald City. The one song that I thought was so silly, especially growing up, was the when they're like all like buffing the Tin Man and like doing Dorothy's hair and stuff.
Yeah, the whole like getting the makeover song. Yeah.
Yeah, that one always seems silly to me. I'm like, if they were going to cut a song, cut that one.
Yeah, that one's pretty silly. That's for sure. Yep. Oh, there's my other thing I wanted to say. So if I was a little girl, like the character's supposed to be in the book, and I suddenly wound up in this strange land and I popped out and there were all these little people and there was this witch and they were all like all around me and they're like and then they're all singing songs and stuff, I would be having a panic attack. That would like raise my anxiety through the roof. I'd be like, hey, this is too much, guys. Calm down. I just got here. Where the heck is here? What is going on? Like, I
Yeah.
would be freaked out. Like, she's kind of like, oh, okay. Oh, well, thank you. And like, she takes it rather well.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't think I would have taken it well if I had been like 8 or 10 and that happened to me. I would have been like, everybody, give me space.
What's happening? Yeah.
I need to go breathe.
So I don't know about when I was 10-ish, but I know that now, like if that happened to me now, I would probably just be like, well, I took the wrong medication.
You know, I'm having one of those. I'm having an acid flashback. No.
Right. Be like, well, this
Well,
will be fun. Coming down's gonna be rough. Like,
yeah. So yeah, I think overall there are good things about both, and I'm definitely interested in reading the rest of the books now. And I think with this a movie like this, like it's just become so important, such a big part of the culture and our history. You can remake it, but it doesn't mean this movie would go away. Like it would
Right.
stop being important to people. People wouldn't stop watching this. And it is delightful. It is fun and entertaining. And as much as like the music is somewhat distracting, like it's also fun, you know.
Hmm.
And yeah. So that's all I think I have to say about it.
Yeah, just I I hope that if people didn't realize it was a book or a series, that this encourages them to like it's worth the read. And it is a little bit like
Childish.
childish. Yeah. They don't use a lot of conjugations. And so it's very much like, well, I thought that you would like to go. You know, like it was very simplistic that part of me was like, what the people don't talk like this. Maybe they did talk like that in the whenever this was written. But I was gonna say in the 30s, then I realized, oh, I don't think the book was written in the 30s. I think it was like 1919 or something like that.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't I don't remember.
Whenever that was
Yeah, a good long time ago. I have to remember that it was written with the intent of children.
in mind.
Like
Yeah.
there's almost it's almost like Grimm's fairy tales meets Dick and Jane type writing,
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. I can see that.
which, which it feels a little odd to me, but it was something that the kids could just grab and read and they were there for it, you know.
Hmm.
My kids now, I offered if any of them wanted to read it. The only one that's interested in reading it is my 10-year-old, and as she's reading it, she's like, "It's an easy read, but it's also long."
Yeah.
Like that's true. Like it's like look at this. This does not look like it would be a long book. It doesn't look all that very
There's
big.
a lot going on as far as like, and then this happens and this happens. And I think, like you were saying, like everything was like the next thing that was happening. There's not a lot of downtime between things,
Yeah.
you know? But like in the book, they still sort of stayed places for like a day or a night and they stayed over. One of the things they did in the movies, or in the book, is that they kept, going up to people's houses and asking if they could stay with them that night, if they would feed them that night while they were traveling.
Right.
And they were like, "Oh yeah, sure, come on in." And I'm like, "Wow!" To think of back in the day where people were that nice to strangers and people didn't expect people to attack them or
Right. But that was a thing. Like we have family history stories of people who would be like, "Well, I stayed here and I stayed there." Like you'll go through the ancestry or you'll go through the family search, the different like websites and where you can attach different sources like censuses to people. Like, "Oh, yes, this was my uncle on this census." And I'm like, "How come in every census they're like entire families that are boarders, like they were a boarder at this house, they were a lodger at this house, they were a boarder at that because they were moving across the country and that's just how they did. They would just be like, "Hey buds, got a room or two that we can all crash in tonight?" That's just a thing. And then, oh, it's a census time, so how many people are in your house right now? You know,
yeah, okay,
but that was a thing that they just did. A lot of the things that are written in this book, because it's kind of a time capsule.
yeah, definitely,
And there are things that like when I read it, I don't think anything of it, but when Erin will read it, she'll be like, why would they do that? Or what is that? Like, you know, and I have to be like, okay, well, 120 years ago, you know, that was a thing. That was what they
yeah,
did, or that was how they spoke, or whatever it was. I think it's a great experience for people, whether you are a big reader or whether you are not really much of a reader. It is an easy read, but there's so much in there that like it's never The Hobbit. Hobbit
it's
will
in the
have
travelogue, but it's not um a deep dive into the characters. Everybody's introduced as things are happening.
mhm,
You rarely get any backstory. So the thing with Tin Man was kind of like a rare, like, oh, we're getting a little more character development here. That's
yeah.
nice. For the
And
most
the
part,
flying monkeys too.
it's about world building, but it's not about character building.
Right.
It's about having a quick, easy read, a quick, easy story, and you get through this adventure.
Yeah. But I do like with the Tin Man. Why is there a Tin Man here? Why does he want a heart? Like that's weird. But then and so he gets a backstory. And then the flying monkeys also. How she's like, why is there a magical hat that like makes you be a servant? And he's like, well, since I'm carrying you across the land, let me tell you, you know. And so he gives just enough of a backstory that he's like, this happened, we had to pay for it, and now here we are, you know.
What you get for being mischievous and like playing a prank on the wrong person. Which
Right.
I think is a good lesson to learn. I have some mischievous kids in my neighborhood. Like earlier, we're driving home from someplace and they were making like a Red Rover line through the street. They weren't playing Red Rover. They're trying to block our path. And we're staying there, like in the road. I'm like, we're in a car. My husband had to like honk at them. They were acting like it was some funny joke. I'm like, guys, do you want to get run over?
Right.
Like, what if we weren't normal people? And we're like, oh, great, kitty, let's kill some kids. Like,
We have right of way, like,
no, you don't. Not when you're not crossing a crosswalk and you're being
right.
stupid on purpose.
I hate it when people do things like that.
They're like,
So
we're just kids, we're just having fun. I'm like, well, would you like to live to be an adult? Don't be stupid. Have
right.
fun, but don't be an idiot. You know?
Well, and it like things like that. Like I have a whole thing. I do not like practical jokes. I do not like I'm fine if it's like a zinger, you know, like not a practical joke, like a zinger where I'm like I do something goofy, and then my sister will be like, "Well, at least I didn't do like Ray or whatever," and you
Oh,
know, joking about me. Fine, I can take a joke.
I like a
And some practical jokes are silly. Like we had a time where, we were at a family's house that they had given everybody a candy bar, right? So this is Heather's candy bar, my sister's candy bar, and the guy that had given the dad of the family, as Heather is telling us a story, he just like took it, like it's like sitting on the table in front of her, and he like goes like this and takes it away, and she didn't notice, and so he passed it to the person next to him, and like it was one of those where it was like, hand it to me, I hand it to them. And like she didn't notice that it went all the way around to my dad who's sitting on the other side, or my dad or my brother who's sitting on the other side of her. And then she tells the story and she's like getting to the punchline. It's like, it was so funny. And we all start laughing so hard. And she kind of has this like, I'm an amazing storyteller, right? And then she goes there, she's like, where's my candy bar? And she looks right at Dan, who was the guy that started the whole thing. And
Dan.
so now we're laughing even harder. Like that kind of practical joke. Like, and then my dad or whoever it was, like slid the candy bar back in front of her on the other side. So while she's like this, he's like slides it back over.
No,
So then
that's
he's
pretty
like,
funny.
I'm proud of you. That is funny. I can handle that. Like
Yeah.
that is, to me, that's like a funny practical joke. But whenever it's just like making people's life worse,
Just to
you're
be,
not funny. If that's what is funny to you, you might be a bad person. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Good luck with that. You're gonna get in some trouble. Someone's gonna put you in your place, or you're gonna get punched or
yeah.
smacked or something at some point.
In the book, it's funny to me that they're like, this will be so funny. And they like pick up the guy
Yeah.
and they drop him in the water. And they're like, ha ha ha, swim out with your fancy clothes now, ha ha ha. And
Wait,
he's so
what if he
conceited.
couldn't swim?
Well, right. Well, so then when the witch says, we're gonna do the same thing to you. We're gonna tie up your wings so you can't just fly away, and you get to swim out just like he did. And they're like, "Oh, we'll die. Monkeys don't swim." You should have thought of that. Like,
Hit a rock and like been knocked unconscious, and then no, he drowns in the river because you thought it would be funny.
right, yeah. So I did like that little things like that are in there, or like Lion when he gives the when the wizard gives him the thing to drink, he's like, "Ah, well, it's not courage until it's in you because courage is a thing that's inside you." And he takes the drink, and then he's like, "What a dupe, what a dope."
Yeah, I thought that was interesting how he fooled them in a different kind of way in
Mm-hmm.
like the book. Like he didn't let them know he's fooling them. Or in the movie, he's like, "Well, you don't need this. So there are people that have this and blah blah blah." And so like he kind of reasons it with them instead of like trying to fool them.
Right.
So I liked both versions. They're both interesting.
Yeah, I like the lesson that it teaches in the book. It's telling you, you don't need for me to tell you that you're courageous.
Yeah.
just look around at all the courageous things you've done. You know, you don't need me to tell you, you are a good-hearted person or you're smart. Just be smart. Like, you know, like, or, you know, just
Yeah.
appreciate what you
You
have,
need
who you
other
are.
people to validate you.
Yeah.
You can validate yourself. You have
Yeah.
it. You just need to find confidence in yourself and to see your own potential.
What they were trying to do in the movie was, first of all, make the wizard not such a bad guy, because he's kind of a jerk in the book. A humbug is what they call him. He's a
Yeah,
humbug.
I thought it was funny because like I will forever associate that with the Christmas Carol,
Yeah.
a humbug.
Humbug.
Forever.
Yeah. Which is like poppycock, tomfoolery, worthless things,
Like
you know.
a
That's all a bunch of humbug, you know.
yeah,
I think of The Greatest Showman too, where he's like the king of humbug or whatever.
yeah, and like if I hadn't known what that word meant, I've been like, he's the king of anti-Christmas.
Right. Yeah. In the movie, they were trying to, first of all, make the wizard not such a bad guy, because he is, after all, the title of the book, The Wizard of Oz. He couldn't be the villain.
Mhm.
But also, they were trying to give you that message. In case you didn't get it, you've had courage all along,
Yeah,
you know?
a little clear for those that didn't read between the lines.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, well, is that all we have to say? Oh, wait. So real quick, in your researching and stuff, did you see anything about the myth of the munchkin that hung themselves during production?
So I have heard of that. I'd heard of that before, actually. And I've been looking, like watching the movie to try to see it, like the place where people say that it is.
Yeah.
I have never seen it. I don't know if it's because it was cut out or because it's not real, but I have heard it. In fact, there was one of those like making of type things where they said that it was a rumor even then. Like that, even as they were making it, that people were like extremely disgruntled, and that before the movie was released, that it was a big rumor that this had happened.
Hmm.
So I've never seen it. Did you find anything where you
Yeah.
saw
Well,
it?
one thing I saw said it was when they found the Tin Man. And I saw that scene and like there was like a big bird thing wandering around in the background that
Mm-hmm.
kind of kept catching my eye. And then when I went looking for where supposedly this part was, it said it was that bird thing. And I'm like, that's a bird. It's not a
Oh,
munchkin.
yeah.
And munchkin is it's like a bird. So I was like, maybe this is a myth. Maybe it's not real. But I always found that fascinating, the concept that there's a person supposed to be a person hanging from a like hang themselves, hanging
Mm-hmm.
from trees in the background. So I just thought that's like really eerie and like with this happy, upbeat sort of movie for that to be in the background. And
Yeah.
that kind of thing sort of like intrigues me. Kind of like, ooh, what's the story there? Anyways,
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of disgruntled, because kind of like I started to kind of mention before, how MGM just basically owned these people. Like they owned the contracts for these people, but this was their whole life.
mm-hmm.
You devoted your whole life to this. Um, I I didn't realize Liza Minnelli is Judy
Judy
Garland's daughter.
Garland. Yeah,
And like even she's in the good old, is it the good old summertime?
I
Where at
think.
the end they have a little kid, and that's actually Liza Minnelli.
Oh, okay.
Like the very last scene where they're like walking out and they have a little kid, they're like at the carnival or something. Um, but yeah, that's her. Because their whole life was on screen. Also, there was another movie that I actually just watched, with Barbara Streisand. Funny Girl.
Funny girl.
Funny Girl is about oh, I forget her name. Fanny, whatever. But she was one of the Ziegfeld girls.
Yeah.
Um and she was one of the MGM starlets, and her whole life was MGM's. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's just the way that it was. And so a lot of these, like the people that were the munchkins, they were like carnies, and uh, they were like, oh, whoa, where are we going to get all of these little people? And so they kind of treated them like Oh my gosh, look at the weirdos. The guy that played the Tin Man and the Scarecrow, I still can't think of their names, but they went to the commissary to get like lunch or something early on in the filming, and the people, the like floor manager or whatever in the commissary was like, you're weird and you're kind of upsetting people, so you have to leave. And they're like, do you know who we are? And he's like, I don't care if you're Jesus, get out. Like, you know. And so they had to have people go in and get food for them, and they had to go eat it like on the side of the set or whatever. They weren't allowed to go to the commissary because they were too weird looking. Like there was a lot of things that people are, Judy Garland was constantly being told that she was too fat and she needed to lose weight all through the movie. Like they were like, we are fine with the concept that the stuff we filmed earlier has you 10 pounds heavier than the stuff now if you can just lose the weight. Just do it.
I'm like,
And
that doesn't make any sense.
yeah. And so
It's
there were a
shorter
lot
period in
of
the movie than it is in the book. Like they make it seem like it's just a couple days at that. Like,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, so there was just a lot of unpleasant feelings. The lady that played the Wicked Witch, apparently they originally had this beautiful, it was a different actress, but she had done this like beautiful makeup, and it was kind of inspired by, maybe it wasn't a different actress, I don't know, but it was inspired by the evil queen in Snow White, in the animated Snow White.
Mhm.
She actually did her makeup to look like the evil queen.
Yeah.
She did it in green instead of purple or whatever, and like the eyeshadow and stuff.
Mhm.
And they were like, no, you're too pretty. Like, you know, that's not what we're going for. And she's like, but I could be evil because like you don't have to be like And they're like, oh, actually, yes, you do. We like that. Do that. And so they made the Wicked Witch this evil, like, you know,
Yeah.
old lady, and just offending people left and right. Just, you know, whatever job whatever acting they did, they were told no, that's too much or that's not enough, or like
Yeah.
just over and over again. And so I know that there was a lot of hurt feelings. There's a lot of people that didn't want to renew their contracts. There was a lot of that on this specifically. And like I said, like they were willing to throw away two of their top actors. And I'm pretty sure Gone with the Wind started being made before Wizard of Oz got finished.
Hmm.
And I'm like, and you guys were willing to get rid of your Rhett Butler for this.
Seriously.
Like, he's Clark freaking Gable. Like, do you not know? You know? But yeah, they were just willing to kind of burn every bridge and acted like they should, oh well, this is business, nothing personal. But you run their entire lives. It is
Yeah.
their personal. So there was a lot of that.
Yeah. So there's a movie starring Renee Zellweger that's called Judy. She plays Judy Garland and the end of her life, like her last like month or so of her life. And they showed like flashbacks of what it was like as a kid to be working on these movies and how it was very strict to like what she could do. And she just didn't have any free time really. She had to be doing this, she had to be doing that, she had to be studying. And like they controlled her life so much that,
Mhm.
you know, essentially they insinuated that it led to her drinking problem eventually. And that it just, I don't know, it was just fascinating, interesting to see like how different Hollywood was back then. And they show us a lot of different movies. So they talk about the way it was. So as another movie possibly to watch, I thought Renee Zellweger did a beautiful job, amazing job as Judy Garland in it. So it's very cool.
Cool. There's a biography of Judy Garland. Let's do it.
Yeah. So before we go, it's my turn to
Yes.
pick the next movie. And ironically, I already mentioned it.
Oh,
I was thinking one because I am a huge Dickens fan, and because Christmas is around the corner, why don't we do A Christmas Carol?
I love it. You
I
know that I'm gonna watch 1,000 versions of it.
Yes, and I also was like, Ray will have a good time with this. watching The Muppets Christmas Carol, and there's another one. Scrooge.
Okay. There's the Jim Carrey one.
I will not watch that one.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen it. I know that it's out there. I don't think I've ever seen it. But
there's horrible things about it, and the animation is just so painful. I can't do it. I can't.
I
barely
feel
can
like
stand Polar Express.
so what's the oh yeah. So to you, what's the iconic, like, yes, the Muppets Christmas Carol, but isn't there like an older one that I feel like was like the iconic one for a while?
There was a cartoon that was Mr. Magoo's. As
I don't know. We'll find it. We'll watch all the ones.
So we'll discuss which ones we'll be talking about. But I will be definitely watching The Muppets Christmas Carol. It's my favorite version of it, and it's probably my favorite Muppet movie too.
Yes, I agree.
Yes, I actually have never read The Christmas Carol. This is one of the only Dickens books I've never read. So I own it, but I've never read it. So.
Oh, well, here we go. All right.
So yeah.
Temporary Toto says it's time to be done. So yeah, for Paperback Books, I'm Rae Davidson.
I am Ruth Craddock, and we'll see you next time.
Yep.